The first time the twins cried inside the Velvet Oak, half the room wanted them thrown out. Glasses paused in midair. A fork stopped on its way to a plate. The saxophonist stumbled over a note and went quiet. In a place built for hushed conversations and expensive drinks, two tiny voices suddenly owned all the air. Ira Sterling stood in the doorway, breath still fast from running through the rain, the double baby carrier strapped tight against her chest. Leo on the left, Orion on the right. 6 months old, born too early, still small enough that every sound they made felt like a medical emergency. She knew every pair of eyes in the lounge had found her. She felt the heat of their disapproval, the judgment wrapped in polite glances. This was supposed to be one normal hour. 2 hours earlier, she had been standing behind the bakery counter, sliding the last tray of croissants into the display while her manager counted the register. Her feet ached. Sugar clung to the cuffs of her shirt. The smell of yeast and coffee had settled into her hair again. She checked her phone between customers, watching the time. The babysitter had confirmed that morning. "I've got them. Go have fun. You deserve it." Fun. She had almost forgotten what that felt like. Then 30 minutes before her shift ended, a new message came in. "Emergency. I'm so sorry. I can't stay with the boys tonight." The words had blurred for a second. She had stared at her phone, the world narrowing to the screen. The date, this blind date her best friend had pushed her into, waited in her calendar like a dare. She could cancel, go home, heat leftovers, rock two babies to sleep, and tell herself that this was enough. Instead, she pictured her reflection that morning in the mirror. Clean shirt, hair actually brushed, a touch of mascara she almost never bothered with anymore. She remembered the quiet promise she had made to herself while zipping up the carrier. At least try once. So after closing the bakery, she wiped flour from her hands, grabbed the diaper bag, secured the twins in their carrier, and caught the bus across town. Every bump in the road made Leo grunt and Orion twitch. By the time she stepped off near the Velvet Oak, both of them were restless. Now she stood at the entrance of Boston's most discreet jazz lounge, soaked at the edges and already regretting everything. Leo's cry pitched up, thin and sharp. Orion followed a beat later, as he always did, like they shared one nervous system. "Hey, hey," she whispered, her palm moving in small circles over their blankets. "We're okay. I'm here. It's just 1 hour. I promise we're going home soon." The promises calmed her more than them. A waiter in a black shirt and narrow tie started toward her. His smile was polite, but his eyes flicked to the carrier with clear discomfort. "Good evening, ma'am," he said quietly, keeping his voice low so it did not carry. "Welcome to the Velvet Oak. Do you have a reservation?" "Yes," she answered. "Under Sterling. There should be a table for 2. He checked the front stand, then looked at the carrier again. "I see the booking, Miss Sterling, but I'm afraid we're not really equipped for infants. This is more of an adults-only venue. The music, the guests, it's just for a drink," she said quickly. Her heart sped up. "Their babysitter canceled last minute. I didn't want to stand him up. We'll sit in the back. I'll leave if they disturb anyone." Leo's cry climbed another notch as if protesting the entire plan. Across the room, several guests turned in their seats. A woman in a silk dress raised her eyebrows. A man in a suit shook his head and looked away. The saxophonist lowered his instrument, the last note hanging awkwardly in the air. The waiter shifted, torn between policy and embarrassment. "I'm very sorry," he began, "but this really isn't—" A chair scraped in the far corner. "I think she's with me," a man's voice said. It carried easily over the hush, calm and certain. The waiter turned. Ira followed his line of sight. In the back booth, a man had stood up. No menu in his hand, no phone in front of him. Dark sweater, sleeves pushed to his forearms, posture relaxed but grounded. He moved toward them with the casual confidence of someone used to being heard. But there was no arrogance in his step. When he reached them, he looked at the waiter first. "Mark, right?" he asked. "Yes, Mr. Everhart." "It's okay," the man said. "She's my guest. We'll take the corner booth." The waiter hesitated. His job told him one thing. The name Everhart clearly told him another. "Of course," he said at last. "Right this way." Only then did the man turn fully to Ara. "You must be Ara," he said. His voice was lower than she expected, steady with a faint roughness at the edges. She swallowed. "Nate?" He smiled. It was not a wide, dazzling smile, just a small, genuine curve at the corner of his mouth that made his eyes soften. "That's me," he said. He glanced briefly at the twins, then back up at her. Rough entry. You could say that, she replied. A short breath escaped her. That could have been a laugh if it wasn't carrying so much tension. I swear I'm not in the habit of bringing screaming infants into fancy jazz bars. Then we're both trying something new tonight, he said. He stepped aside, giving her a clear path. As she moved past, she felt the room's attention slide over her, a wave of curiosity and judgment. She focused on the booth in the corner, on the glow of the small lamp above it, on the promise of sitting down and getting even a little weight off her feet. They reached the table. Nate let her choose the side against the wall where she could lean back and give the carrier more support. He took the seat opposite, folding his hands loosely on the table. The twins did not care about seating arrangements. Leo's whimper built again, then broke into a full cry. Orion's face crumpled underneath his blanket, little fists kicking against her chest. Conversations dipped around them. The band started up again, but softer, careful. Ahura's fingers trembled at the carrier strap. I'm so sorry, she said. I thought they'd sleep. They usually sleep at this hour. They were quiet on the bus, I swear. You don't have to apologize for them existing, Nate said calmly. His gaze stayed on her face, not the people staring. They're allowed to be babies. Babies in here feel like breaking a law, she muttered. I should just go. I didn't know how expensive this place looked inside. I can message you an apology later, and you can tell your friends a crazy story about one disastrous date. I don't see a disaster, he replied. I see a woman who worked a full shift, crossed the city in the rain, and still showed up. His eyes held hers as he spoke. No pity, no condescension, just a quiet certainty that unsettled her more than any judgmental glance. The waiter returned with water, trying not to look uncomfortable. Can I get you something to drink? He asked. Tea, please, Arish said. Anything hot. I'll have the same, Nate added. When the waiter walked away, Leo's crying sharpened again. That particular pitch sent a jolt through Era. She heard every NICU alarm that had ever gone off beside his incubator. I'm sorry, she repeated, voice thinner. They were premature. They were lungs. It still scares me when they get worked up like this. I should take them home. This was a mistake. She reached for the buckle with clumsy fingers. Wait, Nate said gently. Before you uproot your whole night in front of all these strangers, let me offer one thing. What? She asked. Help? She blinked. Help how? Let me hold one of them while you deal with the other, he said. Right now you're trying to calm two tiny humans and fend off an entire room with just two arms. The idea jolted her. Instinct tightened her grip on the carrier. I'm very careful with who touches them, she said. They were in the NICU for weeks. Their immune systems are still... I understand, he said. You don't owe me trust. You can say no. He leaned back slightly to give her space. Not pressuring, just waiting. Leo kept crying, voice breaking into those harsh little gasps that always frightened her. Orion fussed in sync, their distress feeding off each other. Her shoulders ached, the straps cut into her. Behind Nate's head, she saw another patron frown in their direction. Her stomach clenched. Which one is louder? Nate asked. We stress. Not joking, just practical. Leo, she said. Left side, Orion copies him. Then let me borrow Leo for a minute, he said. You keep his brother close. I promise I will follow your instructions exactly. Something in his tone got past her defenses. There was no bravado in it. It sounded like a man offering his hands during a flood, not a hero walking into a movie. She exhaled slowly. Okay, she said. Slide over here. He moved around the booth and sat beside her, close enough that she could hand the baby over without twisting too far, but not so close that she felt cornered. Elbow tight to your body, she said automatically, already unbuckling the left strap. Hand under his head and neck, support his back. He's stronger than he looks, but when he cries hard, he forgets to breathe. I've got him, Nate said. His arms were steady. He slid his hands under Leo with surprising ease, lifting him from the carrier in one smooth motion. He cradled the tiny body in the crook of his arm, one hand firm at the back of the baby's head. As soon as Leo settled into that position, the cry softened to hiccups. There we go, Nate murmured. That's better. He began a slow, rhythmic sway that matched the old ballad now drifting from the band. His hand moved in gentle circles on Leo's back. Ara stared. You've done this before, she said. His gaze flicked to her, then back to the baby. When I was 10, he said, my mom used to hand me my little brother when her arms gave out. We lived in a small apartment, thin walls. Every time he screamed, the neighbors knocked. She tried to keep him quiet, but he had other plans. He paused, eyes on Leo's scrunched face. He had a heart defect, Nate continued. Surgery was risky. He didn't make it past 6 months. The words were flat, but the muscle in his jaw tightened. I'm sorry, Era said quietly. So am I, he replied. For a second, his attention drifted. He was not in the Velvet Oak anymore. He was in a cramped kitchen, a tired woman pacing between a sink and a stove, trying to soothe a crying infant while knocking fists pounded on the other side of a wall. He had watched her once through the glass of a restaurant window too, dressed in her best clothes, being turned away at the door by a host with a rehearsed smile. She had walked out with her shoulders squared, but he had seen her handshake when she pulled out the bus schedule. He looked at Era now, at the damp hair clinging to her temple, at the carrier straps digging into her shoulders, at the diaper bag resting by her leg like a small anchor. He knew exactly why he had stood up when Mark started to turn her away at the door. He knew exactly why something in his chest had awakened when the twins cried. You look like you're having flashbacks, Era said, watching him. I am, he admitted. Different babies, same soundtrack. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Well, for the record, she said, you're doing great. Leo never calms this fast for strangers. Half my friends are afraid to hold them. I'm not afraid of them, Nate said. They're loud, but they're honest. That's more than I can say for most adults I meet. He glanced down at Leo. The baby's eyelids fluttered, fists still clenched, but no longer punching the air. You said they were premature, Nate said. Is that why you're so on edge when they cry? In the NICU, every machine beeped for a reason, she said. If their oxygen dipped, if their heart rate jumped, you learn to hear danger in every sound. It doesn't go away just because you did it in the hospital. How long were they there? 6 weeks, she said. I slept in a chair between their incubators, went to work, came back, repeated. I still hear the alarms in my dreams sometimes. He nodded. My mom used to say hospitals kept time with beeps, not clocks, he said. She was there for months with my brother. How did she manage? Era asked. She didn't have a choice, he said. That was her answer every time I asked. She studied medical bills at the kitchen table, circled numbers, called insurance. She worked 2 jobs. When we got kicked out of that restaurant, it wasn't about the food. She'd saved for that night. It was supposed to be a gift to herself. They took it away in 3 sentences. He watched her absorb that. So when Mark started walking toward you at the door, he added, I recognized the look in your eyes. My mother had it? I'm allergic to that look now. The words landed between them, heavy and real. Ara kept her gaze on his for a second longer, then looked down at her tea. My life is a storm, she said quietly. Not the dramatic kind, just a constant one. Bills, doctor's appointments, shifts at the bakery, bus schedules, diapers, midnight fevers. There's always something. I wanted tonight to be calm. Instead, I walked a hurricane into your evening. You walked your real life into mine, he replied. That counts for more than calm. You don't know what you're saying yes to, she said, if you stay. You think I'm not used to storms? He asked. I grew up in the middle of one. The difference is my storm was mixed with silence, he said. Everyone pretended we were fine, at least yours tells the truth. She let that sit for a moment. Outside, rain was still tapping against the tall windows. The band played a gentle standard. The lounge had gone back to its normal rhythm, but their corner felt like a separate world. Why did you come tonight? She asked him. Really? A mutual friend told me you hadn't sat across from another adult in a long time unless you were working or paying a bill, he said. She said you were strong in all the ways that tired people understand. That sounded worth showing up for. Tracy, she sighed, she overshares. She's honest, he said. I like honest. You don't look like someone who struggles, she said. You look comfortable. Comfort can hide a lot, he said. On paper, my life looks clean. In reality, I spend most days trying not to repeat mistakes I saw adults make when I was a kid, including letting money decide who matters. She tilted her head. That a rehearsed line? No, he said. If it were, it would sound smoother. She smiled, the tension in her shoulders finally easing a little. Leo shifted in his arms, mouth opening in a silent yawn. One of his tiny hands slipped free of the blanket and landed on Nate's chest, fingers grasping the fabric of his sweater. The contact was small, but the effect on Nate was not. For a heartbeat, he stopped swaying. The weight of that small hand sent him back years, to the feeling of his brother's grip on his shirt, to the way that little fist had loosened one last time in a hospital room that still visited him at night. He swallowed, A sting rose behind his eyes, unexpected and sharp. "Hey," Ara said quietly. "You okay?" He cleared his throat. "He holds on just like my brother did," he said. "I haven't felt that in a long time." "Do you talk about him?" she asked. "Not often," he said. "Most people change the subject when death enters the conversation, or they start giving speeches. I prefer neither." "I'm not going to give a speech," she said. "I'm just glad you told me." He nodded. For the first time in years, he did not feel like he was the only one carrying that memory. The band shifted to its new song. The low light above their table caught the steam rising from the tea, the curve of her tired smile, the tiny fist still holding on to his sweater. "You said your life is a storm," he said. "You're not wrong. It looks intense." "That's one way to put it," she said. "I've spent a long time in rooms that are quiet but not peaceful." He said, "Be kind where everyone says the right things and no one feels safe enough to tell the truth. That kind of silence wears you down." He looked at the twins, then back at her. "This noise," he said softly, "is more alive than anything I've heard in a while." She watched him, trying to decide whether to believe that. "You don't have to stay," she said. "You can finish your tea, call this a memorable story, and go back to your quiet rooms." He held her gaze. "I didn't come here for quiet," he said. The honesty in his tone settled something inside her. For the first time that night, she let herself imagine what it might be like if he meant that, if someone actually wanted the whole package. Flower on her sleeves, bus tickets in her pocket, twins with fragile lungs, medical bills in a folder on her kitchen counter. He looked down at Leo again. The baby's hand was still resting against his chest, the little fingers now relaxed. Nate felt that old raw space in his chest shift, the space his brother had left, the space that had never quite been filled by work or success or expensive distractions. He could see the outline of a different life, not polished, not controlled, full of noise and late nights and tiny hands that clung to his shirt because they trusted him not to drop them. He did not feel hesitant about that picture. He felt pulled toward it. "Ara," he said. She lifted her eyes. "I don't know what everyone else in this room sees when they look at you," he said. "They see inconvenience, noise, a broken rule." He glanced at the twins, then back at her. "When I look at you and these two," he continued, "I see something I have been missing for a long time." Her throat tightened. "What do you mean?" He took a breath. The words were simple when they came, quieter than the music but heavier than anything either of them had said all night. "I have only one question," he said. Her heart hammered. "What question?" she whispered. He looked at Leo, then at Orion, then at her. "Can I be their father?" For a moment, Era couldn't breathe. The music faded into the background. Conversations dimmed into a distant blur. All she could hear was the sound of her own heartbeat and the faint, steady breaths of her sons. She stared at Nate, trying to decide whether he was joking, pitying her, or simply unaware of what those words meant. But he wasn't joking, he wasn't pitying her, and he knew exactly what those words meant. Even so, she shook her head, slow, disbelieving. "You don't mean that," she whispered. "You can't." His expression didn't change. No hesitation, no backtracking, just a calm certainty that unnerved her more than anything else tonight. "I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it," he replied. Her voice cracked. "We just met." "I know. You don't know anything about me. I know enough to recognize courage when I see it." She swallowed hard. "You're not thinking straight. You're holding a baby and you're remembering your brother. That's why you said it." He looked down at Leo, still sleeping quietly in his arms, then back at her. "That memory is part of it," he admitted, "but not all of it." Her breath trembled. "Nate, you can't just walk into someone's life and offer something like that." He leaned forward slightly, careful not to wake the boys. "I'm not offering to take anything from you," he said. "I'm offering to stand beside you. That's different." The words hit her harder than she expected. Kindness from strangers she could brush off. Sympathy she could ignore. But genuine steadiness, the kind that felt like it came from a place of lived pain, that was dangerous. That could slip under her defenses before she realized what was happening. She forced herself to look down at Orion, who was still curled against her chest, his tiny hand gripping the fabric of her shirt as if anchoring her to the present moment. "You don't know my life," she said. "It's not a storm you stand in once, it's constant." "I can handle constant," he said. "You say that now," she said, "and then I'll say it again tomorrow." Her breath hitched. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. A soft clink of glass broke the silence. The waiter returned with refilled tea, placing the cups down gently before retreating again, as if sensing the weight of what had been said. Ara stared into the steam rising from her mug. It blurred the edges of the table, softened the golden light, made the night feel unreal. She needed air. "I should go," she murmured. Nate didn't try to stop her. He simply nodded and rose with her, still holding Leo as though he'd been doing it for years. Outside, the rain had slowed to a mist. Streetlights cast long reflections across the wet pavement. Ara secured both infants back into their carrier, hands shaking slightly. When she finally lifted her head, Nate stood there with his hands in his pockets, letting the night settle around them. "I didn't come here expecting anything," he said softly. "Not even a second date." "You definitely didn't expect two babies," she said, managing the faintest smile. "No," he admitted, "but I'm not afraid of them." Wind tugged at her coat. She tightened it around the babies. "I need time to think," she said. "I figured," he replied. "I won't push." "Good." She paused. "Thank you for tonight, for helping." "I meant every part of it," he said. "Even the question you're not ready to answer." Her pulse skipped. She turned away before he could see how those words unsettled her. "Nate!" "Yes." "Whatever this is," she said quietly, "don't make promises too quickly." He nodded once, not offended, not defensive, simply absorbing her words. "I won't rush you," he said, "but I won't pretend tonight didn't mean something." She didn't answer. She couldn't. Not when the world felt like shifting sand beneath her feet. She stepped backward, adjusting the carrier, then started toward the bus stop. Rain collected at the edges of her eyelashes. Halfway down the block, she glanced back. Nate still stood outside the Velvet Oak, hands in his pockets, watching her until she turned the corner. For the next few days, her life fell back into its familiar rhythm. The bakery at dawn, bottles to wash, laundry to fold, medical appointments to juggle, bills to stretch. Routine should have steadied her. Instead, everything felt slightly off balance. When she pushed the stroller through the narrow aisles of the grocery store, she caught herself replaying Nate's voice. "Can I be their father?" No man had ever asked for responsibility like that. Normally, interest meant inconvenience. Attraction meant expectations. But Nate had asked for something else entirely, a place in a family that wasn't his. The bakery customers noticed she seemed distracted. Her manager asked if she was feeling sick. Her neighbor offered her a ride without being asked. Everyone sensed something had shifted inside her, even if she didn't understand it herself. Nate Everhart had built his life around precision. Spreadsheets, negotiations, calendars arranged in 15-minute increments. People relied on him to be the calm center of every storm. But 3 days after meeting, he was distracted in ways that unsettled his entire office. "Sir, the proposal." "Sir, the board is waiting." "Sir, the partners need your approval." He kept answering, "I'll handle it soon." But soon never seemed to come. His assistant noticed him staring at a blank corner of his office for long stretches. His business partner asked if he was exhausted. His therapist left him a voicemail he hadn't returned. At night, he found himself checking the empty crib in the guest room of his penthouse. A crib he had bought years ago for a child that never came. He had never told anyone why he kept it. He stood there one night, fingers lightly touching the railing, imagining two tiny forms shifting inside it. Leo or Orion. He didn't understand why his heart had reacted so violently to them. He only knew that for the first time in years, the edges of his loneliness had been clearly outlined, and the outline looked like a family he wasn't sure he deserved. One night, Ara found herself typing a message. "Thank you again for helping that night. Sorry if I overreacted." She stared at the words, thumb hovering over send. Then she deleted them, typed them again, deleted them again. Instead, she powered off her phone and cried quietly into her pillows so she wouldn't wake the boys. She wasn't crying because life was hard. She was used to hard. She cried because someone had looked at her chaos and seen something worth staying for. It had been a long time since anyone had done that. It happened on a Saturday morning at the pediatric clinic. Ara had taken the twins for their regular checkup, routine weight check, oxygen levels, monitoring for lingering NICU concerns. The waiting room was full of parents juggling toys and paperwork. While she rocked Orion gently, Leo began to fuss. She reached into the diaper bag for a bottle, but realized she had left it on the kitchen counter in her rush. Panic rose quickly, not loud but sharp. Then a quiet voice behind her said, "Do you need an extra bottle?" She turned. Nate stood there, holding two small premixed formula bottles, the same brand she always bought. Her breath caught. What are you doing here?" My goddaughter has an appointment, he said, nodding toward a woman checking in at the counter. I saw you come in. He held out the bottle. You look like you need one. Ara hesitated. Pride, fear, surprise, all pulling at her, then finally reached for it. Thank you, she murmured. Leo latched immediately, tiny hands gripping the sides of the bottle. You remembered the brand, she added quietly. I remember everything about that night, Nate said. She looked away, hoping the warmth in her chest didn't show on her face. You didn't message, he continued softly. No accusation, just fact. I didn't know what to say. That's okay, he said. You don't owe me anything. His voice was steady, but a flicker of vulnerability crossed his eyes before he hit it. She exhaled slow. Do you regret asking that question, she asked. No, he said. Do you regret hearing it? Her heartbeat stuttered. Before she could answer, the nurse called her name. She gathered the twins, adjusting the straps again. Nate stepped back, giving her room to pass. As she walked toward the exam room, she glanced over her shoulder. He was still watching her, not with longing, not with pity, but with something far more dangerous. Patience. The nurse's door closed softly behind her. Nate stood in the hallway, staring at the empty space where she had been, feeling something he hadn't expected. He had spent years building emotional distance the way other men built walls, brick by brick, reason by reason. It kept his world orderly, predictable, controlled. Yet a single morning in a pediatric waiting room had undone more of that distance than he was ready to admit. He stayed until her appointment ended, not close enough to intrude, just close enough to know she was all right. When she stepped out with the twins bundled in her arms, he straightened. She paused when she saw him. You waited? I was nearby, he said simply. Thought I'd hold the elevator. She didn't believe him, not fully, but she accepted the gesture. The elevator ride was quiet except for the soft rustle of blankets and the distant ding of floor numbers passing. At the ground level, Nate spoke before she could walk away. I meant it when I said you don't owe me anything, he said. But I'd like to see you again, only if you decide I'm not too much complication. She adjusted the carrier straps, her expression thoughtful. Complication isn't the issue, she said. My life is already complicated. The question is whether adding anything to it helps or makes everything harder. He nodded. That's fair. And I don't want the boys to forming attachments too quickly. Her voice wavered almost imperceptibly. They've already lost one parent. Nate's posture softened, not out of pity, but understanding. I'm not asking to replace someone, he said quietly. I'm asking for the chance to show up. The words hung between them like warm breath on a cold morning. Finally, she sighed. One step at a time, she said. That's all I can promise. I'll take one step, Nate replied, standing still any day. For the first time since the night at the Velvet Oak, she let herself smile, without pulling it back. All right, she said, one step. Outside the clinic, the wind cut sharp through the morning air. She pulled her coat closer around the twins. Which bus are you taking? Nate asked. Whichever comes first. Let me walk with you, he said. Not to your door, just to the stop. She opened her mouth to refuse automatically, but something in his expression stopped her. An honesty that didn't ask for anything in return. Fine, she said. They walked slowly, matching the gentle sway of the carrier. The city around them turned with weekend energy. Coffee carts steaming, dogs barking, shopkeepers flipping, signs from closed to open. Nate kept a respectful distance. He didn't touch the stroller. He didn't reach for the babies. He didn't hover. He simply walked beside her, letting her set the pace. You seem tired today, he said after a moment. I'm always tired, she replied. It's my baseline. Anyone helping you? He asked. Family? None nearby. Friends? They try, she said. But life doesn't stop for babies or storms. He nodded. I understand. She glanced at him. Do you? You'd be surprised how much. A bus approached the corner. She reached into her bag for a pass, but it wasn't there. She froze, patting the pockets of her coat, the diaper bag, the carrier's side compartment. The carrier's side. I must have left it at home, she muttered. Frustration tightened her voice. Of course I did. Nate handed her a transit card without hesitation. I don't need... It's not charity, he said. It's time, that's all. Time you won't spend walking 8 blocks with 2 infants in the cold. Her breath faltered. Time, not pity, not money, time. She took the card. Thank you, she said softly. The bus hissed to a stop. She stepped up onto the first step, then turned back. Nate! Yes. Would you like to come to their next checkup? She asked quietly. It might help to have another set of hands. He smiled, small, contained, but unmistakably moved. I'd like that, he said. The doors closed. The bus pulled away. Nate remained on the sidewalk long after it disappeared around the corner. Over the next week, Nate showed up in ways that didn't overwhelm her. Not expensive gifts, not grand gestures, just presence. When her bakery shift ended, he waited outside sometimes, not to take her home, but to walk beside her until their paths split. When Leo had a bad night of coughing from lingering NAQ issues, she texted him at 2:14 a.m. Without meaning to, her finger slipped. The message sent. She panicked. Ignore that, sorry. Wrong person. But Nate called immediately. Do you need anything? He asked. Just someone awake, she whispered. I'm awake. Sometimes that was enough. They didn't flirt. They didn't define anything. But something steady grew in the small spaces between exhaustion and hope. Nate Everhart had grown up poor, but built an empire out of discipline and good instincts. His company, Everhart and Nolan, was one of the largest private investment groups on the East Coast. But he told none of that. He liked being Nate, not Mr. Everhart. He liked walking through her neighborhood without drivers or assistants, blending into the sidewalks like any other exhausted adult. He liked that the twins didn't care who he was, as long as he warmed their bottles correctly. But the truth loomed like a shadow behind him. During a board meeting, one of his partners leaned in and whispered, "Everything all right, Nate? You've been different." He forced a smile. Different isn't always bad, but the lie ate at him, because eventually she would discover he wasn't simply a quiet, kind man who knew how to hold a baby. He was a billionaire who could buy her entire building with a lunch break signature. And that truth had already destroyed one relationship, and nearly two. It was a Thursday evening when the first fracture appeared. Ara was packing the twins' overnight bag for a doctor's visit the next morning. Bottles, wipes, a spare blanket. She reached into the bag's side pocket and froze. A rectangle of glossy black, heavy, smooth. A Centurion card. Not hers, Nate's. She had borrowed the pass card holder he gave her on the bus. She must have tucked it into the diaper bag. The Centurion, issued by invitation only, slipped into the seam. She lifted it slowly as if it weighed more than metal. Her chest tightened. She Googled his name, not Nate, but the full name she'd never thought to ask for. Nathaniel Everhart. And there he was. Article after article. Net worth, multi-billion, CEO, major investor, philanthropist, private security, jets, properties, foundations. Her hands began to shake. He hadn't just hidden wealth. He had hidden a world that could swallow hers whole. She set the card down as if it burned. Leo began to fuss. Orion rubbed his eyes. She lifted Leo into her arms, pressing his face into her shoulder. I'm not doing this again, she whispered, heart pounding. Not with someone who holds that much power. When Nate knocked on her door at 8:15 p.m., bringing soup because she mentioned the twins had fevers, she hesitated before opening it. He smiled softly. Long day. She held up the Centurion card. His smile faded. Ara, he said slowly, let me explain. You lied, she whispered. I didn't lie, he said. I just didn't lead with, you hid yourself. The boy stirred at the rising tension. Ara, please. Did you think I wouldn't find out, she asked? That you could just slide into our lives and quietly buy the world around us? That you could protect us without me noticing? That's not what You bought my building, she said. My medical bills. I helped quietly. Her breath broke. Do you hear yourself? She whispered. You didn't help. You took control. And I won't live under someone else's decisions again. He stepped forward, then froze when she stepped back. Ara, he said quietly, I'm not your ex. Money makes people the same, she answered. And I'm done being small in someone else's world. Those words hit him harder than any insult. He had survived betrayal, loneliness, pressure. But this, losing her trust, cut deeper than anything in years. He lowered his gaze. If you need space, he said, voice tight, I'll give it. I need more than space, she said, tears slipping down her cheeks. I need distance. Nate's heart dropped. How much distance? She looked at the babies, then at him. Enough that you can't reach us, she whispered. He closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded. I'll go. And he did, quietly, without asking for one more second. The door closed behind Nate with a soft click. But to her it sounded like something heavier, something final, falling into place. For a long moment she didn't move. She stood there holding Leo against her shoulder while Orion fussed at her hip. Her breath caught in a fragile rhythm she couldn't stabilize. She had survived abandonment before. She had survived betrayal deeper and darker than this. She had survived nights where she rocked two tiny bodies alone, while hospital monitors beeped warnings she tried to ignore. But this hurt differently, because Nate hadn't walked away out of selfishness. He walked away because she asked him to, and she wasn't sure if that made the pain easier or worse. Leo whimpered. Orion rubbed his face against her chest. Their small sounds pulled her back into the moment. She rocked them gently, whispering to them, even as her throat tightened. "It's just us," she murmured. "We're okay. We always have been." But the tremor in her voice said otherwise. Life did not collapse. It simply dulled at the edges. Each morning she dressed the boys, packed their bottles, and carried them down the narrow stairs of her apartment building. She passed neighbors who offered tired smiles. She took the same bus, worked the same bakery shift, folded the same laundry, lived the same storms. Nothing changed, and yet everything did. The spaces where Nate had begun to fit now felt strangely empty. At the bakery, she caught herself glancing out the front window, wondering if he might be walking by. He never was. At home, she hesitated before texting him pictures of the twins, tiny milestones she'd almost shared. She ended up sending them to no one. Some nights, she dreamt of the way he held Leo, steady as breath. She woke feeling like she'd lost something she wasn't supposed to let herself want. 3 days went by. 5, a week, 2. The twins began to notice, not consciously, not with the clarity of memory, but with the quiet instinct babies have for presence. Leo grew restless at bedtime, turning toward the door as if waiting for another pair of arms. Orion cried longer in the evenings, harder to soothe, the shape of his discomfort unfamiliar. One night, after hours of rocking both boys in the dim glow of a nightlight, Ara whispered into the stillness, "You miss him, don't you?" Leo pressed his forehead into her collarbone. Orion hiccuped, clinging to her shirt. She closed her eyes. "I know," she whispered. "I miss him too." At Everhart and Nolan, productivity didn't falter. Numbers still made sense. Contracts still got signed. People still greeted him with the deference they always had. But every surface of his life felt hollow. In meetings, his eyes drifted. In the elevator, he caught himself staring at his reflection, searching for the man he had been 2 weeks ago, before he held two babies and felt a piece of himself return. He ate dinner alone at his kitchen island, untouched food growing cold beside unopened mail. The penthouse, usually so immaculate, now looked like a showroom instead of a home. He had never cared before. Now the emptiness echoed. At night, he walked into the guest room without meaning to. The unused crib stood in the corner, a silent reminder of everything he wanted but never admitted. He placed a hand on the railing, breathing deeply. "I tried," he murmured into the dim light. "I tried not to want this." He didn't know whether he meant the twins or the life that came with them, or most nights. He replayed the moment she said, "I need distance, enough that you can't reach us." He didn't blame her. She had every reason to fear men who used money like chains. But he had never wanted to rescue her. He had wanted to stand beside her. And he had failed to make that clear. 2 weeks after their last encounter, Era returned to the pediatric clinic alone. No extra bottle offered. No steady voice saying, "I'm awake. Tell me what you need." No unexpected presence by the elevator. The appointment went fine. The boys were healthy. Their lungs were improving. She should have been relieved. But when she walked out of the exam room and found no one waiting, a sharp ache bloomed under her ribs. She tucked the boys into their stroller and whispered, "He's not coming." Maybe she expected a quiet morning. Instead, the twins dissolved into simultaneous cries, loud, desperate, relentless. People stared. Mothers offered sympathetic frowns. Nurses tried to help, but nothing worked. Finally, she sank into a chair in the waiting room, tears crowding her vision. "I don't know what you want," she whispered to the boys. "I'm right here." But their cries didn't soften. They sounded like longing. She hated that she knew exactly who they were longing for. That same morning, Nate sat in his office, staring at a proposal he couldn't read. His assistant knocked gently. "Sir, the partners want to move the meeting. Should I reschedule or—" He looked up, eyes unfocused. "Cancel," he said. "Cancel everything today." His assistant blinked. "Everything?" "Everything." Without waiting for a response, he stood, took his coat, and walked out before anyone could stop him. He didn't know where he was going. He only knew where he ended up. The pediatric clinic. He parked across the street, unsure whether to go in, unsure whether he had the right to intrude, unsure whether space was still what she needed or what he needed. He sat in the car until he saw her. Ayara stepped through the glass doors, pushing the stroller, exhausted in a way that made his chest tighten. One look at her face told him everything. The weight she carried, the fear underneath, the absence he had created. He opened his car door, stopped, closed it again. He didn't approach, because wanting to be in someone's life didn't mean barging back into it. Instead, he whispered into the quiet car, "I'm so sorry." Then he drove away before she could see him. That night, after the boys finally fell asleep and the apartment settled into a rare stillness, Ara sat alone on the couch, fingers tangled in a blanket. The apartment felt too still. She stared at the wall, remembering the sound of Nate's voice soothing Leo, the weight of his steady confidence, the way he always looked at her like she wasn't a burden, like she wasn't too much. A knock at the door startled her. It wasn't Nate. It was her neighbor, Mrs. Lynn, holding a casserole dish. "You look tired," the older woman said kindly. "Eat something warm." Ara forced a smile. "Thank you, really." Mrs. Lynn hesitated. "Is the father helping?" "No," she said softly. "He's not in the picture." Mrs. Lynn nodded in sympathy until she added gently, "I wasn't asking about him." The words hit harder than intended. Ara swallowed. "No," she whispered. "He's not helping anymore either." Mrs. Lynn touched her shoulder gently before leaving. When the door closed, Ara sank to the floor. She realized then, clearly, painfully, that distance hadn't brought her peace. It had only brought loneliness and a truth she couldn't outrun. She missed Nate, not because he was kind, but because he felt like home in a way nothing else had. The first snow of the season arrived quietly, soft flakes drifting past the street lamps outside her apartment, settling on the fire escape, turning the neighborhood into something gentler than it felt inside her chest. Leo and Orion slept at last, breathing in thin, steady rhythms. Ayara sat beside their crib, knees drawn to her chest, watching two tiny faces soften in the glow of a nightlight shaped like a moon. Her phone was on the floor beside her, dark, silent, the same way it had been for weeks. She picked it up once, then set it down again. There were so many things she wished she could say. Not dramatic confessions, nothing poetic or grand, just honest truths. "I'm tired. I miss the way you made things feel possible. The boys sleep better when you're around. I sleep better when you're around." But the words stayed trapped in her throat. She rubbed her palms over her eyes, exhaling shakily. "Come on, Ara," she whispered. "You chose this. You needed space." The sentence used to sound like strength. Now it sounded like fear trying to disguise itself. Across the city, Nate stood in the middle of his penthouse living room, staring at the crib still sitting in the guest room. He had tried everything to distract himself. Work, running, reading reports he didn't absorb. But nothing muted the silence in this space. Silence that felt wrong after hearing Leo's soft breathing, or Orion's tiny coos, or Ara's laughter when exhaustion pushed her into humor. He opened the crib drawer without thinking. Inside were the small things he'd kept but never admitted to keeping. A pair of matching baby socks, one blue, one gray, both forgotten under his couch weeks ago. He lifted them carefully, as though they were fragile. "They don't belong here," he murmured. "They belong with you." And yet his fingers closed around the fabric like he wasn't ready to let go. For a man whose life ran on logic, clarity now came only in fragments. All of them pointed the same direction. He needed to fix what he broke, not by buying solutions, not by pushing his presence, but by choosing something harder: humility, patience, and showing up without demanding space in her life. It was time to try. 3 days later, Ayara was leaving the bakery, twins bundled in thick coats, evening air sharp against her cheeks. She locked the door behind her and turned. Nate stood on the sidewalk. No suit, no polished confidence, just a man in a dark coat, breathing visible clouds of cold air, hands tucked into his pockets like he wasn't sure he deserved to take them out. Their eyes met. Something inside her jolted, the kind of recognition that hurts before it heals. Nate didn't move closer. He simply said gently, "Hi." Her fingers tightened on the stroller handle. "Hi. I was walking by," he said softly, "and saw you come out." She almost smiled. "I don't think you just walk by this neighborhood." That earned a faint, grateful exhale from him. "No," he admitted. "I came because I wasn't sure how to stay away anymore." The wind tugged at her hair. The twins stirred in their stroller, and suddenly she wasn't angry. Not anymore. Just tired and relieved he was still here. "I wasn't ready to talk," she said quietly, "but I think I am now." Nate nodded, eyes steady despite the cold reddening his cheeks. I'll follow your pace, he said, whatever that is. Her heart pressed against her ribs. You can walk with us, she said after a moment. Only just walk. That's more than enough. He moved beside her, not leading, not crowding, simply matching her steps. The simplest companionship, the safest version of closeness. It was enough to make her throat tighten. Halfway down the block, Orion began to fuss. Leo soon followed, a soft, rising cry familiar to both adults. Ara stopped and lifted Leo, holding him against her shoulder. Then something unexpected happened. Orion leaned forward in the stroller, arms reaching, not toward his mother, but toward Nate. Ara froze. Nate's breath caught, his entire body stilling as the tiny boy stretched his fingers toward him with unmistakable recognition. He remembers you, she whispered. Nate swallowed. Are you okay with... She nodded once. He lifted Orion with careful, practiced gentleness, the way he had done dozens of times without thinking. Orion settled instantly, cheek pressed into his chest, tiny fist clutching the lapel of his coat. Then Leo stopped crying too, resting quietly against his mother, even turning slightly as if reassured by the presence of the man who once rocked him to sleep. Nate looked down at the baby in his arms, voice barely audible. I miss you, little man. Ara closed her eyes. The moment was too real, too honest, too full. Something inside her softened in a way she had been fighting for weeks. They walked together through the quiet city streets, the four of them, like a family that didn't dare call itself one yet. Snowflakes caught on their coats. Streetlights glowed warm gold. The air seemed to hush around them. About halfway home, Nate asked softly, "Can I carry the stroller, or is that too much too soon?" Her answer was immediate, instinctual. You can. He didn't hide the way relief flooded his face. They continued in silence, comfortable, cautious, full of unspoken things. When they reached her building, Nate handed back Orion and stepped back, giving her space. I won't come up, he said. Not unless you ask. I don't want to push boundaries again. Ayara's fingers tightened on the stroller handle. I know, she said gently. Thank you. He nodded and then, with eyes that held more truth than anything he had said aloud, I'm really glad I saw you tonight. She opened her mouth to answer, but a voice from a nearby window called out, You dropped something. Mrs. Lynn leaned out, holding a folded piece of paper. When unfolded, her breath caught. It was a pediatric appointment card with a note she didn't write, a doctor's scribble, twins responding unusually well to paternal contact patterns. She looked at her sons, then at Nate, and her voice broke in the quietest way. They meant you. Nate didn't move, didn't breathe, just waited. The way a man waits for a door he isn't sure he deserves to walk through. Ara swallowed. Would you like to come up for a little while? The hallway outside Ara's apartment smelled faintly of vanilla and old radiators, the kind of scent that didn't belong to a place but to years of staying, trying, surviving. She unlocked the door and pushed it open, gently motioning Nate inside. He hesitated for half a breath, as if crossing the threshold meant more than stepping into a room. Then he entered, quietly. The apartment looked the same as the night everything fell apart. Soft lighting, blankets folded with care, bottles prepared near the sink. But there was something different now. The air didn't feel heavy, it felt suspended, waiting. Ara sat Leo and Orion on the couch between them, where a pillow barricade formed a little nest. The boys kicked softly, cooing in recognition, as if the space between the four of them had never been broken. Nate stood a careful distance from her, hands loosely at his sides. He didn't reach for anything, didn't force conversation, didn't assume a place in this home. He simply waited. Finally, she sat down. Nate followed, slowly, as if taking the seat beside her required permission from the world. For a moment, neither spoke. The twins filled the silence with soft hiccups, tiny movements, the rhythm of new life, learning to be comfortable again. Ara looked at them first, then at the man who somehow fit into this picture without trying. You learned their sounds, she said quietly. Nate's eyes softened. I paid attention. Most people don't. I'm not most people. Something in her chest tightened, something she had been trying to quiet for weeks. She folded her hands together. I didn't ask you in because, I decided everything, she began. I asked you in because I stopped running from what this is. Nate nodded once, slow, deliberate. Whatever you want to say, he said, I'll hear it. She glanced down at the twins again. I was afraid, she admitted. Afraid of losing control, afraid of someone holding power over me again. Afraid of needing anyone. Her voice lowered. Needing you. Nate exhaled. Not triumphantly, not dramatically. Just a sound of truth landing where it had waited. He said quietly, needing someone isn't weakness. It's what humans are built for. She shook her head. For me, it felt like danger. Their father left. The second responsibility became real. He said he wasn't ready for the weight of family, and I believed, for a long time that I caused that I was too much. Nate's brow tightened, not with anger, but with a kind of grief he wished he could carry for her. You were never too much, he said. He was too little. She trembled. You say that now. But when you bought my building, my hospital bills, everything I was trying to handle, it felt like history repeating itself. Like I was being replaced in my own life. This time, Nate didn't defend himself. He let the truth settle. You're right, he said softly. I meant it as protection, but I realized too late that protection without consent feels like control, and I never wanted to take anything from you. Ayara looked at him, really looked at him. He wasn't the powerful CEO right now. He wasn't the man who stepped into a jazz lounge with effortless confidence. He was someone learning how to love without fear. She drew in a slow breath. You didn't take anything, she said, but you scared me because you matter. And losing what matters hurts the most. Nate's throat worked. Ayara, he said, taking her hands, I would never walk away from you. Not from them. Not from us. Before she could answer, Leo let out a soft whimper. Nate instinctively leaned forward, but stopped himself, catching the impulse. Ayara noticed and nodded toward him. It's okay, she said. You can. Nate lifted Leo gently, settling the baby against his chest. Leo's reaction was immediate, tiny fingers curling in the fabric of Nate's shirt, face nuzzling close, as though finding something familiar he'd expected to be gone. Orion let out a small complaint at being left out. Looks like someone's jealous, Nate murmured. Ayara smiled, really smiled, for the first time in what felt like forever. She handed Orion to him, and there he sat, holding both twins, with the kind of steadiness that didn't come from practice but from devotion. Ara watched the three of them, silhouetted in the warm apartment light. Something shifted inside her, quiet but irreversible. A truth she had been resisting without fully understanding. He wasn't trying to replace her life. He was trying to join it. Nate spoke first, voice nearly a whisper. I don't want to fix your world, Ara, he said. I just want to be in it, however you'll let me. She leaned back, letting the words settle. I'm learning, she said honestly. Learning to let people in without giving away pieces of myself. His eyes softened. I'll take whatever piece you choose to offer, and I'll never use it against you. There was a pause, not heavy, not painful, just full. Ara nodded slowly. I want you in their lives, she said, because they love you and because I see who you are when you're with them. Nate's breath caught. And what about you? He asked, barely audible. Ara looked at him, the man holding her sons like they were his own heartbeat. You're already in my life, she whispered. That's the part I'm learning to accept. For the first time in weeks, Nate allowed himself to smile. Not the practiced one, not the confident one, the real one. 3 days passed, not 3 days of silence, 3 days of breathing. 3 days where the world felt steadier, as if the ground beneath had finally stopped tilting. Nate didn't call non-stop. He didn't hover. He didn't try to rebuild what had broken with grand gestures or expensive solutions. He sent only one message each night. Sleep well, all three of you. And somehow, that felt more intimate than anything he could have bought. But on the fourth morning, a small envelope appeared at her door. No knock, no footsteps in the hallway, just the quiet presence of something waiting to be found. Her name was written in handwriting she recognized instantly. Inside, a single card, a single sentence. If you're willing, I'd like to show you something. Below it, an address, a time, nothing else. No pressure, no explanations, no expectations. Ara stared at the card for a long moment before the twins began squirming in their bouncer seats, demanding the morning routine continue. But something fluttered under her ribs, a quiet warmth, a cautious hope. She tucked the card into her pocket. Later that afternoon, she bundled Leo and Orion into their stroller and stepped out into the crisp Boston air. The city felt different today, like it had inhaled with her, waiting to see what she would do next. The address led her to an old brick building near the waterfront, the kind locals often passed without noticing. Except today, warm light spilled from the windows. Inside, shadows moved gently. An art gallery. Ara hesitated at the door. This didn't make sense. She hadn't painted publicly since the twins were born. She hadn't shown anyone her work, except Nate, and even then only because he'd stumbled upon her sketchbook one quiet morning. She pushed the door open. The gallery was empty, except for one man standing at the far end, hands clasped behind him. Nate. He didn't turn around immediately. He let her take in the space first. Canvas after canvas lined the walls, each one hers. Soft earth tones, brushstrokes shaped by exhaustion and love. Sketches she thought she'd lost. Paintings she finished at 3 a.m. with a baby asleep on each shoulder. Above the entrance hung a simple wooden sign. Her breath left her, like someone had reached inside and gently taken it away. She stepped forward on unsteady feet, passing her own pieces displayed with care she had never given herself. How did you even find these?" she whispered. Nate finally turned toward her, hands open as if offering nothing but truth. "You left them scattered across your life," he said softly. "I only gathered them." Her throat tightened. "This is too much," she murmured. "Nate, this isn't a grand gesture," he interrupted gently. "This is a mirror for you to see what I see." He stepped closer, careful not to rush, not to overwhelm. "You kept telling me you were small," he said, "that your world was small, that your choices were small." He shook his head. "Ara, these walls are filled with the strength you pretend isn't there." Her eyes burned. "Nate." He reached into his jacket and pulled out two tiny white infant shirts. "On the first, will you? On the second, marry us." Leo and Orion gurgled from the stroller, as if perfectly timed. The sound broke her, not into pieces, into relief, into understanding. Nate sank to one knee, but not dramatically, not theatrically. He knelt like a man grounding himself before speaking the most honest sentence of his life. "I'm not here to rescue you," he said. "I'm not here to pay debts or rewrite your story." His voice warmed. "I'm here because I want to hold the pieces with you, because those boys, they already chose me, and somewhere along the way, you did too." He swallowed. "I don't want to fix your world with money," he said. "I want to build a life with time, every day, for as long as I'm allowed." Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't fall. They didn't need to. Instead, she looked around the room, at the paintings born from survival, at the man kneeling with reverence instead of ego, at the two small boys watching with quiet fascination. Her voice trembled, but her answer didn't. "Nate!" She knelt too, bringing herself level with him. "You're not the storm that ruins my life," she whispered. "You're the shelter I didn't know I was allowed to have." His breath hitched. "So that's a yes?" he whispered. She nodded. "Yes, but only if you promise me one thing. Anything. Don't ever stop seeing me as your equal." Nate's smile broke, slowly, beautifully. "Ara," he said, taking her hands. "You were never anything less." Leo kicked happily. Orion reached out a hand toward Nate's jacket. The gallery lights glowed softly around them, and in that stillness, something true settled into place. A family, not formed by accident, but by choice, by healing, by courage, by love that arrived when neither of them was ready. Ready, but both of them needed. Boston's early spring carried a softness that hadn't been there months ago. Or maybe it was Ara who changed, finally able to feel it. The city no longer felt like a place she survived. It felt like a place she inhabited. The wedding was small, not secret, just private, held at the Velvet Oak on a quiet Sunday morning, before the jazz musicians arrived and before the world could intrude. The twins wore tiny suspenders. Nate wore a suit she'd seen him in a dozen times, but it looked different today. Not expensive, not powerful, just right. Ayara wore a simple cream dress. No veil, no diamonds. Her hair pulled back in a loose twist that kept falling apart because Leo kept grabbing it. Nate's hands trembled slightly when the officiant asked him to speak. He wasn't a man who trembled, but this moment, held everything he never thought he would be allowed to have. "Ar," he said, voice steady but soft. "You taught me that love isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself or demand anything. It grows in the quiet, in the in-between, in the mornings where nothing goes right. But somehow everything feels right anyway." He glanced at the twins, who were happily gnawing on their toy keys. "And you showed me that family isn't biology," he continued. "It's choosing each other every day, even when it's hard." She breathed deeply, steadying herself. "Nate," she replied, "I spent so long thinking survival meant being alone, that depending on someone was the same as losing myself. But then you came along, not to fix my life, not to carry me through it, but to walk beside me." Her eyes filled, not with grief, but with clarity. "You loved me before I remembered how to love myself," she said. "And you loved my boys before you even knew what that meant. That kind of love, that quiet, patient, steady love, is something I didn't know existed. The vows were simple, the kiss gentle, the applause soft and warm. No spectacle, no lavish ceremony, just truth witnessed. 6 months later, the penthouse Nate once lived in alone now held the sounds of babies learning to laugh. Plastic toy blocks scattered across sleek wooden floors. The quiet chaos of a home that finally felt like one. Ayara's paintings lined the hallway, not framed by professionals, but hung by Nate, measuring tape crooked, pencil marks still visible. He'd insisted on doing it himself. "I want our walls to look like us," he'd said, "not like a museum." The gallery exhibit continued to attract attention, but Nate kept the spotlight on the art, not on the story behind it. It was work, not his creation. Ayara opened a small studio class on weekends, teaching mothers and caretakers to paint as a way to breathe again. Some came for therapy, some came for community, some came just to feel seen. She understood all of them. Meanwhile, the twins grew stronger, still small, still delicate, but thriving in a world where they were deeply wanted. And Nate, he learned to build Lego towers, to warm bottles at 3 a.m., to sleep sitting up because Orion preferred naps on his chest, to kiss Ara's forehead before leaving for work, and to return home with his expensive suit wrinkled from holding both boys the moment he walked through the door. He still had money, he still had power, but neither defined him here. Here, he was simply dad, husband, Nate. One evening, after the twins finally drifted to sleep and the apartment settled into a rare stillness, Ara leaned into Nate on the couch. "We made it," she whispered. He brushed her cheek with the back of his hand. "No," he murmured, "we're making it every day." She smiled, eyes glistening, remembering the earliest moments. The chaos of the velvet oak, the cries of Leo and Orion, the exhaustion that felt like failure, the man who stepped forward instead of looking away. "You know," she said softly, "I used to tell myself that love was something other people were allowed to have. People who didn't come with baggage or debt or babies." "And now?" Nate asked. "Now," she thought. "Now you've shown me something else entirely." Her voice warmed. "Now I know love doesn't arrive perfect," she said. "It arrives willing, willing to stay, willing to learn, willing to rebuild." Nate kissed the side of her head, breathing her in. "You gave me a family," he whispered. "All I did was show up." Ara shook her head gently. "No, Nate," she said, "you did more than show up. You chose us, and you kept choosing us, even when it scared you." He wrapped his arm around her. Ara pulling her close. "Then let's keep choosing each other," he said. And in the glow of the evening light, surrounded by soft baby breaths in the quiet pulse of a home that once felt impossible, Ara whispered the line that had lived inside her long before she ever spoke it aloud. "My prince didn't come in a white horse," she said. "He came with a double stroller and two little hearts that chose him first." In the soft glow of a jazz lounge, a weary single mother walked in with twins strapped to her chest, expecting rejection. Yet one man rose not to judge or fix, but to hold space for her chaos with steady hands and quiet understanding. Nate didn't offer rescue or riches. He offered presence, choosing to cradle two fragile lives and stand beside a woman who had long believed love was a luxury she could no longer afford. Through tears, sleepless nights, and the slow rebuilding of trust, Era learned that real love isn't a grand arrival on a white horse. It arrives in small, consistent steps. Warming a bottle at 3 a.m., remembering a formula brand, staying when the storm feels endless. The deepest lesson isn't about wealth or perfection. It's that the bravest thing we can do is let someone see our mess and still say, "I choose to stay." Sometimes the strongest families are built not by blood or circumstance, but by two weary hearts deciding day after day to choose each other anyway. What small, steady act of love or presence has ever made you feel truly seen and chosen? Share your story in the comments below. Your words might be the quiet encouragement someone needs tonight. And if this tale touched the tender places in your heart, please hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and join our family of stories that remind us love doesn't always arrive perfectly dressed. It arrives willing. Let's keep believing in second chances together.